Good evening. Welcome to the November 19th, 2018 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Rabbi Ora Ahuvia with us from Congregation Shir Tikva to lead us in the invocation. So please stand for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Rabbi.
It is with great trust and great gratitude that we enter into this role of trying to meet the needs of the many people whose well-being is entrusted to us. May we be blessed with humility, with good intentions, and with the wisdom to bring about the highest good for the greatest number of people. And let us say, Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rabbi. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here. All present. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation celebrating Congregation Shir Tikva's 36-year anniversary. And if I could ask the rabbi to meet me at the podium, I would like to present a proclamation. No worries. Can I call you Rabbi Ora?
You may.
Is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my honor as the mayor to represent the city council and present this proclamation celebrating 36 years Congregation Shir Tikva. If I could, I'd like to read this into the record for you.
Please, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Whereas Congregation Shir Tikva, which is the Song of Hope, was formed in 1982 as a Troy Jewish congregation by two mothers desiring conveniently located Jewish education for their children. While Troy and neighboring Rochester, northern suburbs of Detroit, are valued for their ethnic diversity, top-rated schools, cultural programs, and community safety, they do not have a significant Jewish population. And whereas, after developing and understanding their own identity as a congregation, Shir Tikva joined the Reform movement and have continued to value that relationship. They began to grow by attracting new members from a broader geographical area who were looking for a smaller, inclusive, genuinely welcoming, and a casual come-as-you-are congregation. And I've been there, and it is come as you are. Today, Shir Tikva serves members throughout Metro Detroit and is still the most convenient congregation for families living along the I-75 and North Woodward corridors. And whereas the Shir Tikva congregation prides themselves in welcoming all who want to be with them without hesitation or questions. Members, non-Jewish spouses, and partners enjoy the same rights and privileges as their spouses and partners. And in keeping with the Reform movement, they make no distinction between those who are born Jewish, Jews by choice, or non-Jewish partner. Shir Tikva is also equally welcoming to individuals and families of all backgrounds, races, ethnicities, disabilities, sexual orientations, and gender identities and expressions. And whereas in 1988, Shir Tikva welcomed Rabbi Arnie Slutherberg, better known as Rabbi Arnie to all, and grew and flourished with him as a true spiritual leader. With his inspiration, they joined the renewal movement, now being only one of two congregations with joint reform and renewal affiliation of North America. They continue to fully embrace all reform principles and practices and very much appreciate the deep spirituality, you know what I mean, musicality and enthusiasm that renewal adds to their services. And whereas, as their name implies, the congregation members love to sing, and if you've been there, you know they love to sing. Inspired by the leadership of Rabbi Arnie and the congregation of lay leaders, they continually evolve and refresh religious practices. They embrace Tikkun Olam,
yeah.
and are proud of the numerous significant activities undertaken by the congregation to repair the world. The state of Israel, as well as its people and land, are vital to the congregation's expression of Judaism. And whereas in 2015, Shir Tikva's beloved Rabbi Arnie announced his plan to retire as a full-time rabbi and continue to serve as Rabbi Emeritus. Following an extensive rabbinic search, the congregation was thrilled to find such a wonderful match in Rabbi Ora Ahuvia. And in July of 2016, she joined as head rabbi. Rabbi Ahuvia continues to lead in the traditions of Shir Tikva with warmth, compassion, knowledge of Judaism, and most importantly, song. So now therefore be it resolved that Detroit City Council extends sincere congratulations to Shir Tikva congregation for its 36th anniversary. And be it further resolved that Detroit City Council joins the citizens of this community in appreciation and celebration of Shir Tikva's 36th anniversary as they enter into their future with dedication to both their faith and their community. It's presented this 19th day of November 2018. It's signed by myself, all members of City Council. Rabbi Ora, congratulations to you, and you are an important part of our community, and we thank you for what you do for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That is so meaningful. I hope that you all are able to undertake your meeting with a little greater haste than I was able to arrive tonight. But it is such an honor to be recognized in this way. It kind of makes me wish that Reb Arnie could be here because he is well known in this community. And we're just so grateful for the support of this body. It means quite a lot to us, so thank you. Yeah.
Okay, once again, congratulations. Thank you. Next on the agenda are carryover items. There is one carryover item this evening, City Council deliberation from November 15th, 2018, special meeting. Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move D1 carryover item, City Council deliberation from November 15th, 2018 special meeting, and recommend that we act on the 3 candidates that we interviewed last Thursday.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Pennington. Resolved that the Troy City Council deliberation from November 15, 2018 special meeting to deliberate on the 3 candidates that were interviewed. Discussion on that resolution?
I have a question.
Councilman, or Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I guess I'm a little unclear exactly what that resolution does. To act on the 3, I'm not sure what that means. So if I could have some clarification.
Councilman Henderson.
In our interviews, we had a little bit of deliberation at the end of the evening. All of us, most of us had comments about each of the 3 and then requested some time over the weekend to make decisions and better get a feel for how those interviews went. And I think at this point, we've all had plenty of time to discuss, think, and react to all of the body of interviews that we had undertaken, and we should be in a position now where we can make a decision with regard to those 3 candidates.
Any other discussion on that particular resolution? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
No.
Councilmember Hamilton?
No.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
No.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. So the deliberation will consist of the 3 candidates that we interviewed. Is there a discussion that's on the table? Anyone wish to continue the deliberation? Councilman Henderson.
I'm certainly willing to talk about any of them, but in the past, with these situations, we've simply gone to a vote or a nomination of your preferred candidate, and the candidate with the most votes across the table is the one that is the appointed.
That's typically the way we've done it. At this point, does anyone on council wish to continue to deliberate and talk about the 3 candidates? Councilwoman Abraham.
Mayor, I voted yes because I did want to have some discussion on the 3 candidates. I'm not necessarily of the opinion that it may be one of the 3 candidates that we appoint, but I want to have the discussion. And, I may potentially amend the resolution that's on the table or ask for support for that. But I'd like to have the deliberation and discussion if possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Could you read the resolution back to me, Ms. Dixon?
The resolution that was just made.
Passed. Yes.
Resolved that the Troy City Council hereby acts on the deliberation of the 3 candidates that were interviewed on Thursday, November 15, 2018.
Correct. Thank you. So is there any deliberation on the 3 candidates that council wishes to talk about? Councilman Hamilton.
I would like to amend this to include Mark Miller amongst the deliberation.
Support.
Who supported that one? Okay. It's been moved by Councilman Hamilton and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that the resolution be amended to include Mark Miller in the deliberation. Any discussion on that resolution? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Discussion on that resolution. Councilman Hamilton.
Definitely a point I've consistently made. To me, there's only one candidate that has worked in the city for 18 years, that has the trust of our employees, that has the trust of our business leaders, and has my trust, and that's Mark Miller, and that's who I will be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the table? Councilwoman Hoderick?
I come to the process that we found ourselves in searching for a new city manager with a background that includes a number of years in the corporate world, working in corporate communications, strategic planning. I've also worked in a municipality, this one, for a number of years. And I've also worked in corporate investigations where I investigated disability fraud. So, many of you know that I'm very familiar with the city and with the city staff. And I've had to work very hard to make sure I cleared my mind and approached this as dispassionately as possible. I also approached this as a taxpayer. I have lived here a long time, and I've witnessed us as a city overlook two very key internal candidates at one time that could have been appointed as city manager at various junctures. And I thought of it as a complete waste of the investment we made as a community in their professional training and everything that they brought in terms of institutional knowledge about the city. So here we are again with an internal candidate whose name has been on the table, largely because he's been serving in the role since we found ourselves in the position of having to fire our recent city manager. In this process, I've received numerous emails from business leaders and also discussions with business leaders at various events I've been at, supporting wholeheartedly Mark Miller. We've had feedback from residents who've also thought it made sense to take an internal and continue the process that we're going through of healing from what we've been through. And then we've had the feedback from employees. Overwhelmingly positive feedback about the direction he's taken the staff in these past months. There's also a factor that is not as apparent to those of you watching, perhaps, what it's like to have him at the helm since we removed the last city manager. The experience of working with him, for me personally, has been that he has assumed the role with professionalism and a thoroughness. Our agenda has now come to us a day earlier, allowing more time for our review and for transparency in decision making. His crisis communication efforts, which I'm most versed in, have been outstanding. More importantly, he's done something that leaders in any entity really strive for. He's built a team that rallies around him and he rallies around them. A cohesiveness, a family. There's a secret sauce there that you don't get automatically with a new candidate. He's also the only candidate in the interview process who offered us a written plan of action with specific action plans, all very on point with what our needs are, that he suggested we should pursue. We've hired from the outside before. That hasn't worked out so well for us. Two of those outsiders were ultimately fired. One of them removed himself when he decided he wasn't a match. He had come from out of state. I've witnessed all of this firsthand. We are still working through a time and need stability, wisdom, calmness, institutional knowledge, and the spirit of collaboration that the city manager Miller has brought to the position. To replace him with someone else means I would be indicating a no confidence in his ability to perform this role, but I'm fully confident in him. I was very impressed with the three candidates that we interviewed in the final analysis, and I wish them well in their careers, but none of them had something that just stood above and was demonstrably above what we already have. And for me, I feel like we will lose momentum, the momentum that we're gaining if we move on. Members of this body have often said they value the advice and input of employees on matters and do not advise ignoring it. I would think they would agree such an opinion surely applies here. And I'm very supportive of continuing on with City Manager Miller.
Thank you. Comments from council during deliberation? I think some are, Councilman Henderson.
Yeah, we embarked on this manager search a while ago, spent considerable amount of money, relied on professionals to bring us good quality people to apply for the position. We had a number of those, and the 3 were selected by a majority of council. Eruptions in the council chambers in disgust that we couldn't be trusted to make the right decision. And, you know, I'm going to just counter Councilwoman Hoderick's information. Before I was in real estate, I spent 20 years as a recruiter of personnel. So I, too, have a keen ability to look at decent people and ferret through that. And you may or may not recall, but when we went through the last manager search, I was the only person that didn't choose our former city manager, and I was coerced by other council members to change my vote so that I would we would unanimously select the city manager. I refuse to do that at this point. I stand by I have 2 candidates actually that I prefer, and I stand by those 2 selections should I be able to make those choices. So. Again, I don't come at this haphazardly. I have skills, I think, that allow me to see people for what they are. Mr. Miller has done a great job, just as Mr. Culpepper did a great job the last time we had a void. And I think it's time to pick up, do something different and better, and move the city forward. And that's why I'll be choosing the 1 or 2 that I have in mind.
Thank you. Any other comments? I guess while some are collecting their thoughts, I'll give my 2 cents. You know, this has been a very difficult task. And I think we all did our homework. I think we all did our due diligence. And some of us are going to come to different conclusions. I listened carefully to the interviews. I looked at the resumes. I looked at the cover sheets. I, too, spoke to the employees, including many that did not come to the engagement and did not write notes to City Council. I would point out that we received about 45 notes from employees out of 360. So that means 310 did not write us a note. But I did get an opportunity to speak to many of them. And as I've said all along, I am not going to ever stand up here and say anything negative about the candidates that applied. They were all very good candidates. And I maintain, I believe they could all do a wonderful job here because of the employees that we have here. I also spoke to city managers and mayors of surrounding cities and got their input. I spoke to business leaders too, and I spoke to the chamber. I listened to the residents also. And there's one thing about being on the city council, we all have people that speak to us. Some speak favorably to us and some don't speak very favorably to us, but we all have our own base, I would say, that talks to us. Many that I spoke to and that sent me emails were asking for a fresh start. They're asking for someone that would better engage and participate in the city. So I've listened to everyone, and I haven't just listened to one particular group or one particular base, but I can tell you this: I value the opinion of the employees very much, and they should have a large voice in who gets picked, but they should not be the sole source of who gets picked. If you've been around and you've been in the management field, you don't let the employees pick their boss. They have a say in it. You listen to them, but they should never pick their boss alone. Now, having said that, if this process happens to change tonight and we don't pick one of the top three, I think it really speaks to the process that we have here, because we could have let four or a different member be in the final choices to be able to stand up and do an interview with us. And if we go outside of those three, I think you've done a disservice to the process to some degree, because we didn't get an opportunity to interview that person. We didn't get an opportunity to put those persons in a second interview. And that would have been very easy to do if you wanted that person to be included. And I know 3 members of this council wanted a different person to be part of that. But if somebody wanted to change that, I think this kind of does a disservice to the process. But I will support whatever this body decides. And I'm anxious to hear what other members of this council have to say during this deliberation. But I think the process is going away to some degree, which concerns me a little bit. Councilman Pennington.
So my father passed away in 1990, and so since then I've been running my family's business on my own, basically. I get some counsel from my mom, who helped my dad out in the early days, and I do talk to employees when I hire from the outside. I've hired and fired probably, I'm just sitting while everyone's talking, I'm trying to figure out how many people I've hired and fired over the years, and I'm guessing it's over 100. So probably a better idea of the process than someone who's never gone through this before, and I've been on city council for a short amount of time. We came to disagreement after interviewing 6 people, and when we couldn't agree, my idea was to move forward 2 people who everyone agreed upon. When that was not moved, it was kept at 3. To go outside that process after all the time that we put into this, I think does a disservice to the process itself. And I would not support that.
Any comments? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. sorry, I've been processing, speaking of processing everything everyone's saying and trying to put it all in what I want to come out of my mouth. But I'll start with process. I think that's a very good place to begin. And for me, I'm actually very proud of this process where we are at this point. In March, the former city manager was fired, and we temporarily appointed Mr. Miller. Mayor nominated him. And Mr. Miller took over, and I saw him jump into action that night. I'll never forget, I walked back to the chambers, and he had huddled a group of the department heads, and he was working hard at it. And that's probably a burning memory I have of Mark Miller at this point. And, you know, we talked a little bit about whether or not it was wise to do an executive search at all at the next meeting or the next, maybe a couple meetings after that. And there was good conversation from this table about how important it was to do that process regardless of who we picked, because it's so important to have due diligence done. It's best to make an informed decision. And the right thing to do at that time was to hire the Gov HRs who we ended up picking and have them do a search. Took a little longer than anticipated, I think, to get things going. We had to, I think it got drawn out, but Gov HR did start their search. They got a lot of applicants. Most of them were very well qualified, I believe. Some of them, maybe not. And we were presented with some options that we eventually narrowed down to 6 to interview. The 3 that were in the final interview on last Thursday, and Mr. Miller was included as well. We did those interviews, and yes, there was disagreement and some outbursts, or whatever you want to call them, at that table, and I don't want to talk about that specifically because I don't think that's relevant right now, but we did need to work through that and move to the next step, which we did. We agreed to interview 3 in a final round, and I'll tell you where I came to after this. We interviewed 3 on Thursday night, and I was very impressed with all 3. I had maybe hoped that I wouldn't have been so impressed by them in different ways. But I don't know if we want to talk about specifics of any of them at this point, but when it came down to, for me, after 4 days ago, I spent all weekend thinking about this, I probably spent more time on this than I should have. I had other family obligations and my kids, but they understand for this particular one. But so my point is I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And at the end of the day, I couldn't find a reason to appoint one of those 3 over Mark Miller. And I know that differs from how I sounded at the 27th of October when we had our first round of interviews. But to me, regardless of all the extraneous factors going on with the former city manager and everything, Troy is in a place where we do need some stability. And it really came to me over the weekend that the smartest thing we can do as a body is to appoint Mark to continue. Because no matter who of the other 3 qualified candidates that we appoint, there is going to be a learning curve for some of them, for all of them. And it's going to slow things down here. I had an opportunity, I met with Mark and talked to him a little bit because I felt that was important. And I'm very, very confident that he can take us to the next level that we need to go, all the while healing the city in whatever way it still needs to be healed. I know there's been disagreement as to whether or not there needs to be healing. I tend to believe there still is some healing that needs to be done, and it's still going to take a while for everyone who worked with the former city manager to feel like they're in a safer place to move forward. I think Mr. Miller's the right man to do that job, and I think he's proven himself on that level. I also, and I told this frankly to him, obviously there's things he can improve on as well, as there would be with any city manager that we brought in, anybody new. But I think for the best of the city and for the best of council, it's smartest to move forward with Mark and to work with him moving forward. So there'll probably be more discussion if we get to there, but I do want to thank GovHR for the process that they provided for us. I think it actually did help us do the right thing and do all of our due diligence and really make an informed decision at this time.
Thank you. Councilwoman Abraham?
Thank you, Mayor. think all 7 of us at the table have done their homework and have put in their due diligence, even if we don't come to agreement. I truly believe that. And certainly all of us have been in leadership and management positions where we've hired and we've fired and we've reorged and we've staffed for different needs. Everyone is coming to their decision or conclusion, I think, from a place of honesty. So please let me be clear on that point. I've thought of little else since the interviews on Thursday night. And one consistent theme that came out from Thursday night was there were, in my mind, 2 lead candidates. And throughout the course of the next 4 days, which of the 2 candidates of those 3 I preferred went back and forth for various reasons. And I struggled. And frankly, I prayed on what decision to make, because it was not clear to me which one of those 2 would be better for the city. And as usual, after prayer, the answer came to me. The reason I was struggling with which of the 2 would be better is because the answer was, it was neither one. What we have in place today with Mr. Miller is the best thing for the city. I have said that 2018 has been the lost year. And it's been lost because we've lost a lot of momentum since March 10th. There are so many things that we wanted to do that we basically had to put on back burner while we addressed this issue and frankly had to focus on other things. It's time we got that momentum back. This is no disrespect or to disservice to any of the 3 candidates that were interviewed Thursday, but going forward with any one of those 3 would mean a further delay in momentum, and we've already lost so much time. This city needs to get back on the tracks, and the person best positioned to do that is Mr. Miller. He's already proven that. He's basically had an 8-month job interview. He's had a job that he didn't ask for, but he stepped up and exceeded all expectations. He has brought together the staff and has started the healing process. I understand employees can't pick their boss. It certainly has not been a practice that I've become accustomed to. But in this case, when there has been a hostile work environment, it is a really important factor to consider. And there were about 50 employees that provided feedback, whether it was on the Post-it note or Post-it cards that GovHR provided, or in emails, or in other forms. And 50 out of 300 is a statistically significant sample size, if I may go a little statisticky on you. And of those 50 pieces of feedback, it was overwhelmingly in support of Mr. Miller. That's a very significant data point to me. It's not the only data point, but it's extremely important. We've heard from the employees. We've heard from the public. There were questions about why Mr. Miller never made it to the 2nd round interview. People are paying attention, and frankly, I thought they just assumed he'd make it to the 2nd round. I can appreciate not wanting to do a disservice to the process. And I think the process has changed since maybe, or I'll say different processes may have been used in the past to select a city manager. I'm very mindful that we don't change the process just for change's sake. I'm more concerned about doing a disservice to the community. I think we need to make sure the city is well positioned fiscally and bring stability, and I think Mr. Miller is the best person to do that. So I will be supporting the resolution to appoint Mark Miller. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments by council? I just one final comment, because the process is important to me, and it bothers me the way that it got to this point, because I nominated Mark Miller for interim, and I think it was a 6-1 vote, but I didn't have any problem voting for Mark to be the interim, and quite honestly, I didn't need to listen to a second interview from Mark either, because I've worked with Mark for a number of years, but I wanted to hear from somebody else in the process. I think if somebody on this council at the last hour wants to change the process, I just wonder why he didn't get an opportunity to be able to be in front of us, because it easily could have been done, and given the whole council an opportunity to interview and continue the interview process, instead of, it gives the appearance that in the last few days, certain members got together and came up with a different conclusion, because it would have been easy just to say, I want to have an interview with Mr. Miller, and I would have agreed to that wholeheartedly. There was some discussion on that. And that's what bothers me a little bit about what happened here. Not so much, and it has nothing to do with Mark Miller. Mark's going to do a great job. He's a great guy. And I'm just concerned about what happened in the process. And the process should have included everyone in the final interview. And the process should have included not somebody having a private interview with somebody. So, if we're ready for the vote, Councilman Henderson.
I agree. If we're going to individually interview them, my thought is, hey, let's postpone this so that we can all sit down and have an hour with Mark Miller personally, one-on-one, and see where it goes from there. But I wouldn't do that. This is, we need to do this and take care of it. But this particular situation that you're looking at right now falls into one of the top 3 politically charged flip-flops on this city council. And that's unfortunate, because this should not be a politically charged situation. This should be a practical situation where we're looking for the best candidate to move the city of Troy forward. And again, I'm disappointed in the way that this is evolving. So.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I can take a hint. Thank you both. I think it's rich to talk about my personal interview with Mark Miller, considering relationships with previous city managers and the amount of one-on-one meetings that happened. So I would never go there in an ordinary reason, but that's something else to talk about, politics and flip-flopping. I'm extremely disappointed in that statement. All of us have an opportunity to speak with current city manager Miller at any time. I made a choice to reach out to him because I deliberated for the past 4 days and realized I was struggling. I do recommend that if he gets appointed tonight, we have a performance review in the closed session and discuss and go through everything that we would normally go through with a current city manager, because I do believe, as I've told Mark in the past and today, there's room for improvement on certain issues. That's how it works with direct reports. But I'm just a little surprised to hear what I just heard, especially from the source. But to the mayor's point, I believe that we will all work together with the new city manager or the current city manager, and it will be for the best of the city. That is doing government best, is coming together to support those who are chosen to lead. We speak by resolution from this table. And with that, I'd like to move D1, resolve that the Troy City Council hereby appoints Mark Miller as city manager contingent upon background check if necessary, pre-employment physical, psychological evaluation if required, and contract language.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton. Did you mean to say background check if needed?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
Only because I'm not aware of if additional background check is required at this point, considering he's already serving in the position.
I don't think so. Let's move the resolution, or talk about the resolution. Let's get it on the table for discussion. Unless anyone has any. Listen, Mark Miller's been with the city for how long, Mark?
18 years.
18 years. I don't really think we need to do another background check on him if needed. I don't think we need a pre-employment physical for Mark. We don't need a psychological evaluation of Mark.
I'd support if you're amending.
I am. Question for Lori. Contract language. Did Mr. Miller sign anything when he was appointed? No.
You would, I would recommend that you have a contract if you're appointing him. It would be, the template used would be my contract and also the past city managers. Those have been done by outside legal counsel. I would highly recommend that you do have a contract. I'm sure that Mr. Miller would appreciate having a contract as well. And as far as the other things, it is up to you. It's your choice as to whether or not you decide that any of these other checks and balances are needed. So it's your call.
Mayor, to clarify, I did not sign a contract when I was appointed acting and permanent, but I also was never terminated from my other position of Director of Economic and Community Development.
Correct. I think there was a resolution to do all of the above, including the pay. I think I know how to count, okay? I've said this before. So there's 4. And I want to amend the resolution. Resolve that Troy City Council hereby appoints Mark Miller as city manager contingent upon the execution of a contract that is mutually agreed upon by our outside counsel and Mr. Miller.
Support.
Discussion on the amended resolution. Mayor, Councilwoman Hoderick.
It was 2 years ago. Looking here, I can see employees that are in attendance as we work through this tonight. And clearly, I think residents and stakeholders in the process are watching a council that is sincerely trying to work together and in the best interest. It's been emotional at times. I've appreciated the candid discussions I've had with many people, including fellow council members. We've taken this very seriously. One of the areas that comes up is people recognize how amazing the city of Troy is and where it's positioned in the region. And there's this idea that we need to just take off and there's so much it can be. That's absolutely true. And I think sometimes because he's so quiet, he's not a political being. He's not out there with colorful, glad-handing, loquacious type behavior like mine. you don't see what's inside City Manager Miller's mind and heart with regard to the city and what he has put in position to enable us to keep taking off. So there could be folks, we're never going to make everybody happy with our decisions, right? Who have this sense that, we won't propel forward. I would argue the opposite. Don't mistake that quiet, direct, limited in words, candid gentleman for someone without a vision. He has that vision, and he has a staff that's been rallied around him. Now, having said that, I will also comment that we did have a city manager who, it was a disappointment what happened in March. There were some great qualities he brought to City Hall, and employees have all recognized that. He had a customer service mentality. He had an out-of-the-box thinking mentality that he brought to bear, and I hope we won't lose that in the process. Let's blend the experience we had with the previous city manager and the good that he brought with the stability and the institutional knowledge that's here now. I think that's what I'm feeling is, and gives me confidence that we'll propel forward in a really solid, high-integrity way. And, I promise I'll work together with my fellow council members, even those of you maybe not in agreement tonight. We'll work through this so we can round this corner as a city and ensure that this high-quality place that we live in, outstanding community, continues to be the outstanding community that it is. That's my vow, my personal vow, and I'm sure everyone here shares that. I just wanted to say that out loud to help give confidence to the process. This process validated for me these facts, and I think we can feel very good about the process and where we've come out.
Thank you. City Clerk Dixon, I don't think I officially recognized that the motion was moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you.
Councilman Pennington.
Yeah, I just want to comment a little bit when Councilman Hoderick had to say we have seen eye to eye on some issues and we have not seen eye to eye on some issues, but we have gotten over it and we have talked about it. I'm surprised by the last minute flip-flop here by politicians. I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. So really, when you see somebody flip-flop, you really can't be surprised. But what bothers me is the conduct by Councilman Hamilton at our last meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Baker did not want to bring up outbursts, but I think he owes every one of us an apology and every person in the city of Troy an apology for his conduct at the last meeting. My son gets out of the Navy after serving for 6 years, and for him not to get an opportunity like it was intimidated by Councilman Baker would be unconscionable to me if he were to come up against that. So to call the mayor a joke, retract that, call four city council members a joke, and then move an obscene gesture toward either the mayor or whoever he was throwing that to is ridiculous, is uncalled for, and I think he owes everyone an apology. And I can count too. This is, like I said, this is a surprise. I mean, we're going to lose, I'm going to lose this vote, but my candidate that I thought I was voting for is not going to come through, but you're going to see how someone, when they lose a vote, should take it.
Before, This is going to be a great opportunity for this council to show its moxie, okay? This is going to be a great opportunity for us to show the community and to show the children. Whenever I get asked to go to the schools quite a bit, to talk to the kids, and it's the best thing you can ever do as the mayor is talk to kids, because they ask the best questions, the smartest questions, and it's a great thing to do. And I had an opportunity to go to a school during the election, and we were talking about the election, and we were talking about the process, and that when you vote, sometimes you don't always win. Sometimes the person that you want doesn't get elected. And as you grow up, you have to understand that we live in a democracy, and you're not going to always win. But it takes a lot of backbone, it takes a lot of integrity to say to the majority, I'm going to agree with you, because the majority has made a decision. So I know it's going to be very difficult for some members of this council to vote in the majority, but I would ask you to vote in the majority to show that we are united and that we're going to move forward. I considered not doing that tonight when I knew that there were going to be one member was going to change his vote, and just because I'm not happy with the process that went on, I wish that person would have let somebody interview instead of not interviewing. That's the only problem I have in this. But I think it's time to show the community that we are going to come together. And I'll call him Councilman Hamilton.
Yes, I apologized at the meeting. I apologized on my social media, and I also apologized at the last meeting, both to the four of you and to the Troy residents for what I said. That being said, to make an accusation of an obscene gesture because I probably lean on my head like this, or apparently I make that gesture to my wife every night because I sit on my couch like this every day. So, you know, I've watched the meeting many times, so I'm kind of assuming what you're looking at, but there was no gesture made. And to not even talk to me about it, to just see, that is what politicians do, is they take a clip of someone saying something or some clip of someone on a video and make some assumption about it. And I mean, that seems very politician-y to me. So, you know, I apologize for what I did wrong. I'm not going to apologize for something that you made up. And you could have asked me about it and said, did I intend anything with that, which clearly I didn't. But no one did, and you just made an accusation. So I'm just shocked, that's all.
If we could just stay on point to the resolution that's on the table, please. Councilman Henderson.
So I know that we'd like to have these 7-0 votes, especially when you have a city manager that you want to embrace. But, you know, again, I'm going to reiterate, the last city manager, I have been slapped around with that guy so many times by people in Troy, people on this council, and, you know, I'm just not doing that anymore. I have enough backbone to stand by my decisions, and so I'm going to be voting no on this. It'll be maybe a 6-1 vote. I can live with that. But with that said, I will treat Mark Miller exactly how I treated Brian Kishnick and John Zerlag before him, with professionalism and an inviting attitude to try to get the work of the people of Troy done. I will not vary from the program. It's how I was raised, it's how I do business, and that's how it's going to happen for me. So again, my vote is strictly based on my experience, my ability to look at the other candidates that were here and draw a good conclusion as to what I think should happen in the city of Troy. If I end up on the short end of that stick, so be it. But again, I vow to the city and everybody on council here that we move forward in a professional manner. And I do look forward to a closed session where we can have a review and we can discuss things that we couldn't discuss in public with Mr. Miller.
Any other discussion regarding the motion that's on the table? There's going to be time for council comments at a later date. Are we going to talk about the resolution on the table? Councilwoman Abraham.
So I think every one of us at this table has dealt with disappointment, a vote that didn't go their way. I know we are capable of rising above it. And, Councilman Henderson, I wouldn't want you to vote any other way than what your conscience dictated, truly. That's the only way to approach this position. As I think about this resolution to appoint Mark as the city manager, it is a reminder that this is not about us appointing Mark. This is about what is best for the city. So keeping it focused on Mark, I think you will help keep this city moving forward positively. I think you will help not just build staff morale, but I think you will help develop this into an organization that even into the future, when we have new staff members, will bring it to a new level of integrity and professionalism. So I will be voting yes.
Any other discussion on the resolution on the table? I'd just like to point out that this resolution is contingent upon an agreement between Mr. Miller and City Council and a contract that's going to be put together by our outside counsel. Mr. Miller hasn't even accepted the job. So. We're going to vote on the amendment first, correct?
Correct.
Okay, does everybody understand we're voting on the amendment?
Which amendment? Can we read?
Can you read the amendment back?
The amendment is resolved that the Troy City Council hereby amends D1 City Council deliberation from November 15, 2018 special meeting to read, resolved that the Troy City Council hereby appoints Mark F. Miller as city manager contingent upon the execution of a contract that is mutually agreed upon by outside counsel and Mr. Miller. And then following this resolution, you would actually need to vote on the resolution as amended.
The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
No.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now can we have the vote on the resolution?
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. I guess we'll say congratulations, Mark. I don't know why in the world you're still smiling. Take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Troy City Council meeting is back in session. Next on the agenda are public hearings. We have two this evening. E1 is a zoning ordinance text amendment, file number ZOTA 252, design standards. And I see Brent Savanant, our planning director, is ready for an introduction. Let me open that meeting, public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Slater, City Council. The first of two proposed text amendments this evening. This one is ZOTA 252. ZOTA stands for Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment. This is proposed revisions to the City of Troy zoning ordinance. So this effort was initiated by the Planning Commission. It was driven by two goals. One, improve the quality of site plan applications that are submitted in front of Planning Commission and City Council. And two, improve the overall quality of building and site design in the City of Troy. So in terms of the first goal, improving quality of site plan applications, these revisions propose that we require color renderings and three-dimensional computer-generated building models for all site plan applications. And furthermore, that all elevation and floor plan drawings be sealed by a Michigan licensed architect. Both these provisions, we strongly encourage applicants to submit these, and they've been doing so for years, but it has not been formally required. This will bring us and make us consistent with other communities that have these requirements to improve overall quality of the submissions by applicants. The second goal, improving overall building and site design. There are three arms for this goal: compatibility and transition, architectural building design, and enhancing character, environment, and safety. The first arm, compatibility and transition. There are three provisions that are proposed to accomplish this. One is that building design shall enhance the character of the surrounding area in relation to building and parking placement, landscape and streetscape features, and architectural design. Street front shall provide a variety of architectural expression that is appropriate in its context and prevents monotony, and building design shall achieve a compatible transition between areas with different height, massing, scale, and architectural style. The second arm, architectural building design. There are 6 provisions that are proposed. They include fostering a lasting impact on the community through the provision of high-quality design, construction, detailing, providing high-quality durable materials, and making EIFS, or the material equivalent, only used as an accent material in buildings. The third provision is developing buildings with creativity that includes balanced compositions and forms, designing roofs that are appropriate to the architectural style of the building, and for commercial buildings, incorporating clearly defined, highly visible customer entrances, and finally including community amenities that add value to the development, such as seating areas and water features. And the third arm, enhancing character, environment, and safety. There are 5 provisions proposed to accomplish this. They include providing elements that define the street and the pedestrian realm, creating a connection between the public right-of-way and ground floor activities, creating a safe environment by employing design features to reduce vehicular and pedestrian conflict, enhancing the pedestrian realm, and improving safety for pedestrians through site design measures. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item on October 23rd, 2018, and recommended approval 8-0. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Brent. Any questions from council? Thank you. Well done. I see that one resident has signed up to speak on this item, Rosemary Toms.
Mayor?
Yes?
She signed up under E2.
Oh, excuse me. Did you want to speak on this one? I open it up for anybody that wants to speak in a public hearing, so you're welcome to speak now or you can wait. Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none, I will close this public hearing and open it up for resolution. Councilman Pennington.
I will move E1, zoning ordinance text amendment, file number ZOTA 252, design standards as printed.
Support.
By Councilman Pennington and supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve E1 as read into the record and printed in the agenda packet by Councilman Pennington. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next public hearing is E2, a zoning ordinance text amendment, file number ZOTA 253. Building height in GB General Building Zoning District. I'll open that public hearing and welcome Brent Savanant, Planning Director.
Thank you. This is a simpler amendment. This was initiated by the Planning Commission, and it's based on resident feedback for a development known as 1-800 Self-Storage on Rochester Road. That's a representation of what was presented to the Planning Commission. It's under construction, it's nearing completion. It's a 4-story building, and the Planning Commission, myself, probably City Council have heard that a lot of residents think this sticks up like the proverbial sore thumb. So Planning Commission initiated a text amendment to reduce the overall height in this district from 5 stories down to 3 stories. So moving forward, maximum height in this district, if this is approved, would be 3 stories and 40 feet. Planning Commission held a public hearing, voted 8-0 to move this on, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Just
Councilman Hamilton.
Are there any other buildings that are above the 3-story besides that self-storage? Or is that the only one that would be non-compliant with this in the future?
I think there's one building, I forget which one it is, but
your message to us was that the Macy's building, Macy's, also.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was it. So what this would do, it would be create nonconformities for those 2 buildings, and which means that they can continue to exist forever, provided they're not destroyed beyond 60% of their construction value. If that happened, they would have to either seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals or rebuild consistent with the zoning ordinance.
Great, thank you.
Any questions from council? Thank you. Rosemary Toms? Is it Toms?
It's Thomas.
Thomas. Oh,
Thomas.
Sorry.
Hi.
Good evening.
My name's Rosemary Thomas. I reside at 335 Ottawa Drive in Troy. I'm not sure, this is my first time talking in front of the City Council, so I'm not exactly sure the order. I wanted to talk a little bit about this amendment, but some other amendments in general. I know there's a lot of issues that you guys, important issues that you guys are working on and deciding on, and I just want to say I appreciate all the service that you do and that you provide for our community. That being said, I wanted to talk about this zoning amendment and the zoning, other zoning ordinances in general. I find it really unsettling to see the City of Troy is only addressing issues after the fact, such as the problems with the large LED billboards and signs. Only after enormous, unattractive, and distractive signs were already constructed did the city decide to review the 30-year-old ordinance and finally update it. Myself, as well as many other residents, are happy that new changes were made, but we're dismayed to see it was only made after the fact, and now we all have to live with the signs that are currently in place. So secondly, this ordinance about the building height, again, it was only after the storage building on Rochester Road was already approved and constructed that this ordinance was looked at. A pattern is clearly evident that the city is behind making sure that all residents are protected from these kinds of buildings. Unfortunately, now the surrounding neighbors that are near the storage building on Rochester Road now have to live under the shadow of this large structure. The Troy Planning Commission and the City Council needs to be more proactive regarding the development that's taking place currently in our city. We need to bring up the subject of, what I wanted to bring up is the subject of cluster developments. The construction and the right to build is not in opposition. This is the next thing I'm looking at and I'm doing some forward thinking here. What needs to be considered is the impact of these developments on existing neighborhoods. Current residents should not have to be worried about their next door neighbor selling to a developer to construct these clusters in our existing neighborhoods. Troy neighborhoods originally constructed in the 60s and 70s are in jeopardy of being replaced with these cluster developments, which is not what has not been considered is the impact that these will have. We need to think less about expanding the tax base and more about the health, safety, and happiness of its current residents. The major concern most people have is traffic safety, both on major roads and neighborhood streets. It's unrealistic to expect residents that reside in these subdivisions that were built without sidewalks to now add them because a developer wants to build an added cluster. In closing, I urge the City Council to consider the impact of all development, both commercial and residential, to the surrounding neighborhoods and neighbors and infrastructure in our city. I ask that you please be more proactive in outlining the protection of your fellow citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Please come forward. Not, this is for the public hearing on E2. Yes. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on E2? Seeing none, I will close this public hearing and return it to the table for resolution. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I'd like to move E2 zoning ordinance text amendment file number ZOTA 253 building height in GB General Building Zoning District as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton that we approve E2, the zoning ordinance text amendment, as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I just want to thank the Planning Commission and Mr. Savinon and all of you for putting these forth and having them brought to us. It takes a lot of work and a lot of thought, so I thank you for that. And I also want to thank Ms. Thomas for speaking and coming forward, and definitely things to think about and things to consider as we move forward and stay on track here in the city, and I'll certainly take what you said to heart. So thank you.
Councilman Pennington.
Ms. Thomas, the previous city manager that we ousted was in the process of cleaning up some of these ordinances, and that's what we're in the process of doing. But right, as you mentioned, unfortunately, we've closed the barn door after some of the horses have already left. So apologize for that, but our new city manager is on it.
The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Brent, and your staff, and the Planning Commission. I don't see that anyone has signed up for public comment on items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Somebody want to move, waive the rules and allow Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
I'll move to waive the rules to allow Ms. Landmesser to speak during this section of public comment as she's a Troy resident and it relates to an item on the agenda.
Support.
We just need a consensus.
Yep.
Please come forward and we don't do this often because we don't want to set the precedent, but we would just ask you to sign up.
Except what I wanted to comment on, I had no idea I would be commenting on it.
I understand. I understand.
Okay, I'm sorry if I did it the wrong way, but I really didn't realize that.
Please give us your name, please.
Yes, Avis Landmesser. I live on Ottawa and Troy. And commend you all for this amount of time and effort that you put in appointing our new city manager. When Mr. Miller did not make the first cut, I was quite surprised and dismayed. And now we have spent a lot of money and a lot of time only to come back to the gem that we have. And if it took this amount of money and this amount of time for us to realize the gem that we had, it was money well spent, time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any city council or city administration response? Councilwoman Hoderick.
You know, we are likely to take some grief about why did you even go with the search. And at first, I didn't think we needed to. And numerous people, including City Manager Miller, said it's the right thing to do to validate that you have the right person going forward so that you can demonstrate to yourselves and to all the stakeholders in the community that you've done your due diligence. I think Mayor Pro Tem Baker said that. The process was not for naught. We learned a lot in the process. We met great candidates that we can wish well, and we validated that the person we have internally can serve the role. We are not the only city that has had that happen. There are other cities that go through the process and will ultimately end out with an internal candidate. Happens in corporations too, where they vet internals and externals and sometimes choose the internal. We needed to go through this process, I believe, considering what we just went through, and we want to demonstrate that we're working with the greatest integrity to our city residents and businesses here. And for me, that was the investment. And I think that's the same conclusion you came to. I want to thank you for your comments tonight, and you've been on the entire journey with us through all the interviews. And thank you for your engagement and the engagement of many, many folks that were involved in the process. Very much appreciated.
Any council response? There are no postponed items this evening, so we will move to regular business. I-1 are board and committee appointments. A are mayoral appointments. I have one mayoral appointment this evening. I would like to appoint Barbara Fowler to the Planning Commission for the term that expires 12/31/2019.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilwoman Hoderick that we appoint Barbara Fowler to the Planning Commission for the term that expires 12/31/2019. Councilman Hamilton.
We're, of course, this is to replace the irreplaceable Don Edmonds. And I remember the mayor spoke at Don's funeral very beautifully, gave the eulogy, and spoke of how even in his last days, he was talking about who he wanted to replace him. And, you know, he was such an inspiration to all of us. And I spoke with Ida, and this is Barbara's who he wanted to replace him. And I'd be honored to support who Don believes is the right person.
Thank you. Barbara would be here this evening for this appointment. She asked me to let council know that she is traveling for Thanksgiving to see her family, and that she couldn't be here this evening, or she would be here. So. Any other comment? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to Barbara for volunteering for probably the most important commission in the city. I-2, there are no city council appointments. I-2 are board and committee nominations. I'm not going to make any this evening. Does Mayor Pro Tem? No? Next on the agenda is I-3. There is a request for a closed session. Does somebody feel a need to move that resolution? I guess there's no one that wants to move the resolution to go into closed session. I would assume you don't want us to talk about this in the public forum at this point.
No, Mayor, this is something that I did want to present to you and give you the opportunity to convene a closed session should you need it. So I'm fine with you not deciding that that is something that you need. I did want to provide you with an opportunity, however.
Councilwoman Abraham.
Just to clarify, Ms. Bloom, you would anticipate individual members providing you feedback in lieu of a closed session. Otherwise, you would assume we're in support of whatever recommendation you made.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments on I3? I4 is a Good Jobs for Michigan support letter. I see Glenn Lapin, our Economic Development Specialist, coming forward. Good evening, Glenn.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The Good Jobs for Michigan program was created in 2017 as a statewide incentive program to attract and expand industries that are of key importance to the state of Michigan and to its economy. The program allows for the capture of state withholding taxes for a limited period of time based upon the average annual wage and number of certified new jobs created by the authorized business. Aptiv U.S. Services General Partnership is proposing to locate a mobility industry research and development facility at the company's existing Troy business location at 5820 Innovation Drive. You may be aware that Delphi and Aptiv, they split off and created a separate company called Aptiv. So it was once a part of Delphi. The proposed project would employ approximately 500 people and represent a capital investment of about $20 million over 5 years. The company is seeking to apply for Good Jobs for Michigan program assistance in order to locate the facility here in Troy instead of another facility located in another state. The state of Michigan requires local governing body support in order for Good Jobs for Michigan program assistance to be considered. Since the city of Troy desires to promote economic development in the community and have the ability for potential local qualified projects to be able to access state of Michigan economic development programs, such as this one, the Troy City Council is being asked to consider a resolution of support for that application. Aptiv would still be required to follow any necessary local development approval processes, including applying for building permits, site plan review, or amending a consent judgment if needed. And there is a resolution before you for that support. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Glenn, any questions from council? Councilman Pennington?
Glenn, good to see you. Do they plan on, is this 500 jobs coming to the city of Troy? I mean, I couldn't understand by the language on it.
That is the proposal, that 500 new jobs will be coming to the city of Troy.
Excellent.
Yeah. But they're needing to seek for this incentive from the state.
Right.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Thanks. You've kind of just restated, but just to clarify, this is just a letter of support from the city. It's not a request for funds from the city.
That is correct. That is correct. Just a letter of support for the application to the state of Michigan on behalf of the company.
Councilman Hamilton?
So in the end, is the end goal then they would get state funding, but would they get local property tax funding too, or is that undefined? Or
there is no request at this point for any local incentive or support on that.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Pennington.
One follow-up, Glenn. How many employees does Aptiv have in the city of Troy now? Approximately.
Since it's still like Delphi and then Aptiv, some sort of in both. I think there's a few hundred right now. And there's space available in the existing buildings that are over there.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Glenn. Somebody would like to move the resolution? Councilwoman Abraham?
I'll move I4, Good Jobs for Michigan support letter as printed.
Support.
By Councilwoman Abraham, supported by, that was Councilman Hamilton, that we approve I4, the Good Jobs for Michigan support letter as printed in the agenda packet. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn. Motion passes. Next is the consent agenda. Does any council member wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Pennington.
No.
No? Hamilton?
Yes.
Got it. That we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion on those items? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Motion passes. If you're here on a consent agenda item, they've all been approved this evening. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. K1A is an announcement for a public hearing on December 3rd, 2018, Community Development Block Grant Program Year 2019 application. Next, public comment for items not on the agenda. And I'll call upon Craig Chamberlain, Troy resident, who wishes to speak. Good evening.
Honorable Mayor, council members, I'm speaking tonight as president of the Raintree Village Homeowners Association, and in that role I have frequent interactions with some city staff members. This being the week of Thanksgiving, I'm here to express my gratitude for the positive and professional interactions that I have experienced. In the past year, Kurt Bovenseep has received emails from me on any number of topics, including most recently today. And he always answers promptly and helpfully. Throughout the year, I've also enjoyed positive interactions with Bill Hootery, Scott Finley from Engineering Department, from Brent Savidant from Planning, and from Paul Evans in regarding to city ordinances and signs. Perhaps the person I have most frequently interacted with is Teresa Shepard in the assessing department, who always cheerfully responds to my requests for research assistance. She is certainly deserving of recognition. I do respect the time of these individuals, and I try to limit my inquiries to them, but with the subdivision of 810 homes and a 5-acre stormwater detention pond, things do come up. More recently, I've had interactions with a few other city staff. It had been several years since our subdivision had a Halloween parade, and we wanted to have one again. Thanks to Cindy Stewart for helping arrange for a fire engine to lead our parade. Thanks to Alex Bellick, a GIS administrator from the IT department, for providing some high-quality maps, one of which was used to help show the parade route. Thanks to Sue Reisterer from the city clerk's office, who got our permit request through in really too short an amount of time without any complaint. Thanks to Larissa Fiegel in engineering department, who, with the help of others, did some research in the timeline of the naming of the Raintree City Park in relation to the name of our subdivision. And finally, thank you to James from Fire Station Number 1, who drove the fire engine at the head of our parade. His attitude was simply fantastic. The parade day was a bit rainy and the turnout was small, but as the pictures show, we had an enthusiastic group of marchers who at the end of the parade were more interested in the fire truck than in the cider and donuts. Thank you all.
Thank you for those nice comments. It's not too often that we get somebody to come up and say something positive. So we appreciate that. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment on items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Any council member or city administration wish to respond? Councilman Pennington.
Craig, I want to thank you. During the interview process, when we were interviewing candidates, you had pertinent questions to the candidates that I was standing and listening to, and I appreciate your response and help with that.
Any comments or response from administration? Councilwoman Abraham?
Craig, I want to thank you because you take care of your neighborhood. I know it's a thankless job sometimes, but you have truly, you are a good neighbor in every sense of the word, and you're one of the reasons why the city of Troy is such a wonderful place to live in. So I know you're not alone in your efforts. There are others that support you, but you are a consistent, calm, and positive presence whenever you come to council, and I suspect when you interact with city staff. So thank you for that, for your recognition of those wonderful employees, and thank you again for being a extremely good citizen and an even better neighbor.
Thank you. Any other comments or response? Next, our council referrals. There are none this evening, so we will move to council comments. Any comments from council this evening? Any further comments from council? Seeing none, how about reports? Any comments from council regarding the reports in the agenda packet this evening? There's no closed session this evening, so we are adjourned. Thank you for coming this evening.